Welcome into Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live. Now here's your host, Kevin Gray.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio American Network, presented by Media MPC. Go to www.mediampc.com and download the app on your iOS and Android device and get your mobile press conference on with Media MPC. If you don't catch anything live with us, make sure you download and subscribe to our free podcast available on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you get your podcasts for free. Just search the words Clutch Talk Sports Radio. We are live today on the Sports Radio America Network, on TuneIn Radio and the TuneIn app. My producer Memphis spends along for the ride with me today on the CT Sports Radio live show. You can also see our show streaming live currently on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio. And you can watch our show currently streaming live right now on our YouTube channel. Go to all of our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CT Sports Radio, where you can follow our show all over social media. Everything from the CT Sports Radio live show. And make sure you visit ClutchTalkSportsRadio.com. That is ClutchTalkSportsRadio.com for everything for our show. A good afternoon to everyone joining us live today, coming off a tremendous weekend of action across the entire sporting landscape. College football back in a big way. Although, look, that Florida-Miami game, 10 sacks by I think Miami had 10, or Florida had 10 sacks against Miami.
Right.
Felipe Franks was okay. Look, if you like riveting, drama-filled football, I guess that was the game for you. But if you like a well-played game, maybe not so much. A whole bunch of pass interference calls. The referees weren't all that great. Just kind of a sloppy football game. But, you know, we'll take what we can get in week 0 of college football. So Miami and, of course, Florida getting a 24-20 win in opening weekend of college football. I think the best game of the night was the Arizona-Hawaii game, which came down to a Mike Jones-like tackle by Hawaii to preserve that win. I'm sure Queen Brigade does not like that reference, but she knows what I'm talking about. So, yeah, college football is back. Preseason action across the NFL took place over the weekend. Dallas Cowboys got a 34-0 win over the Houston Texans. We'll talk a little bit more about what the latest is with Ezekiel Elliott with respect to his contract. He had some words and some thoughts today to offer up to Maxim Magazine. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Coming up here in about 17 minutes, Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota is going to join us to talk a little Vikings football, a little preseason NFL football. Your man Dalvin Cook from the Minnesota Vikings was really good this past weekend against the Arizona Cardinals. But Memphis, the biggest news of the weekend came from the Indianapolis Colts, and some news that I didn't think we would hear ever, at least right now, with respect to the Indianapolis Colts and one Andrew Luck. If you haven't heard, Andrew Luck retired from football at the age of 29. Andrew Luck will be 30 in about a couple of weeks. But Andrew Luck said he's had enough. This was a very riveting situation, okay? It started mid-game between the Chicago Bears and the Indianapolis Colts. Your man Adam Schefter, look, if you can call it a Shefty bomb, you can call it whatever. It was a bombshell. Adam Schefter reports in the middle of the Indianapolis Colts Chicago Bear preseason game that Andrew Luck is planning to retire and going to announce his retirement on Sunday. Hadn't told his teammates yet, hadn't told anybody yet, had only told apparently Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard and Frank Wright, the owner, coach, and GM of the Indianapolis Colts, but his teammates had no idea. So all of a sudden, this news starts to break on Twitter, with Adam Schefter literally breaking Twitter, and then news and information starts to make rounds, and all of a sudden, Andrew Luck is going to have to explain all of this after the game is over with, starting to tell his teammates during the game. You saw the reaction by Jacoby Brissett during the middle of the football game, and then that's when things really started to get weird. So obviously fans who have their phones in the middle of the football game are getting alerts that their quarterback that they're watching on the sidelines is, in fact, retiring 2 weeks before the season starts for the Indianapolis Colts. And unfortunately, there were some fans who decided to let their voices be heard and started to boo Andrew Luck on the way to his press conference to formally announce at the age of 29 that he had retired from the game of football. And Andrew Luck had some very striking comments with respect to his retirement. A guy who apparently about 10 days ago really started to contemplate the idea of retiring from the NFL. And my man said, look, man, I am tired. I am in pain. I have been stuck in this cycle of injury and rehab and playing for the last 4 years. He said, I'm in pain. I'm still in pain, referring to the calf/ankle injury that he's dealing with right now and the amount of punishment that Andrew Luck has taken over his 7 seasons in the National Football League. Yes, compiled a 55-33 record, but at the same time, my man got beat up a lot behind that porous offensive line that we talked about for years that the Colts had to improve to give Andrew Luck a chance to play long into his career. And guess what? The Colts never really did that. They did that too little, too late. Last year, coming back as the AP Comeback Player of the Year, had 39 touchdown passes, which was second in the NFL. Andrew Luck had a spectacular year last year behind a quality offensive line that had a really good defense, and it looked like coming into this year had a really good chance to making a deep run into the AFC playoffs. That is all for naught now because your man Andrew Luck decided, you know what, I'm going to leave this game. I've made nearly $100 million. I've just gotten married. I'm trying to start a family potentially. I want to travel the world. But more importantly, my body's tired. My mind is tired. I'm fatigued. I'm broke down. And I just can't do this anymore. I cannot, in good faith, get out here with my teammates to put my body in a position to not only get beat up week after week, but more importantly, my mind and my mental fatigue and my sanity has to be intact for me in order to go forward and play football. And it just simply can't be that for him anymore. So on the one hand, I completely applaud Andrew Luck for saying, you know what, enough is enough. I'm tired. I'm hurt. I'm beat up. The rehab process, the grueling rehab process of doing this over and over and over again, it got to be too much for him. And I don't have a problem with him saying that he needs to go ahead and step away from the game of football. It is better to leave the game too early than to leave the game too late when you've got individuals like a LaRon McClain out here crying out for help on Twitter to deal with the brain and head injuries that he's dealing with currently right now. There is a fine line between doing what you love and doing what you need to do and doing what you want to do for the sake of doing it for everybody else. Andrew Luck, and he talked about this in his press conference. He said, look, man, I needed to make a decision for me. I've been making a decision for everybody else, coming out here playing hurt year after year, game after game, month after month, year after year for this Indianapolis Colts football team. He didn't throw the medical staff under the bus. He didn't throw anybody under the bus. He said, look, man, my time has come. My football journey is complete because my body just cannot respond, and it will not respond the way that it needs to going forward in order for me to be the best quarterback that I can be for the Indianapolis Colts. No harm, no foul, no problem, no big deal. When we look at this for the Colts, though, my goodness, Jacoby Brissett now steps in as a starting quarterback for this football team. Only 4-11 as a starter throughout his time in the NFL. But a lot of folks like Jacoby Brissett. We're going to find out how good he is in short order for this Indianapolis Colts football team that had real deep AFC playoff aspirations, especially when you look at that defense. Darius Leonard, a rookie and an all-pro last year. They had some really good parts coming back, especially with the offensive line being much better going forward. Quentin Nelson, a little bit of nasty on that offensive line, really provided them what we thought was going to be a potential championship-like roster going into this year. That all changes now with Andrew Luck obviously gone from the Indianapolis Colts. So for them, obviously, they're going to have to regroup, figure things out. They're going to get behind Jacoby Brissett. T.Y. Hilton, still one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, is going to be playing with Jacoby Brissett. He had a nice message on Twitter in response to Andrew Luck saying that he's going to dedicate this entire season to him. But let me tell you something. Let me look right here at this camera right here. Let me talk to Dan Dockich and Doug Gottlieb and some of the other individuals who had some really trash takes about all this. Doug Gottlieb has been getting lit up all over social media, including by your man Troy Aikman of the Dallas Cowboys. Troy Aikman lit Doug Gottlieb up today, okay, or yesterday evening, and a lot of folks reacted today on Twitter. You could see Troy Aikman's tweet talking about the BS that Doug Gottlieb spewed on Twitter. Look, man, Doug Gottlieb said something to the effect of this: him rehabbing, quitting because he couldn't go through the points of rehab is the most millennial thing that Andrew Luck could have done. Let me tell Doug Gottlieb something. Shut up. How about that? How about Dan Dockich talking about the idea that he done this and that, and that Andrew Luck, quitting is this, that, and the third? Shut up. I don't understand where guys come off with this notion that they can dictate or try to articulate what a player who visibly and articulated in his press conference said, I'm stopping playing football. I'm tired of participating in car crashes for 3 hours at a time, 17 weeks at a time, year after year. I'm tired of doing that. Because you know why I'm tired of doing that? Because I've dealt with torn rib cartilage. I have literally had a lacerated kidney to the point that I was peeing blood for the Indianapolis Colts. I am tired of putting myself in a position where I'm hurt year after year. And more importantly, my quality of life is diminishing every time I get on the football field, every time I get hurt, and every time I try to rehab to come back to get on said football field to participate in said car crashes for 3 hours at a time for 17 weeks at a time, year after year. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. The mental fatigue and the mental anguish that comes from rehabbing over and over and over again. It's too much. There is nothing wrong with retiring from the game of football. Everybody says, well, there's a lot of folks that are out there saying, well, there's a difference between quitting and retiring, and Andrew Luck essentially quit. Quit what? Quit getting beat up for 3 hours at a time, 17 weeks at a time, with the kinds of injuries that he dealt with, the shoulder injury that wound up keeping him out for a year. If there's anybody that you should blame for Andrew Luck's career being shortened the way that it ultimately was by him deciding to retire, you can go light up Ryan Grigson. You know who Ryan Grigson is? He's the former GM of the Indianapolis Colts who refused for years to put a competent offensive line in front of Andrew Luck, to where Andrew Luck continued to get sacked year after year after year, to the tune at one point being sacked more times than any other quarterback in the NFL. There is no other quarterback to me that has taken more punishment, maybe aside from Cam Newton, that has taken more punishment in the NFL over the last 7 years than one Andrew Luck. And that is sad for a guy who came out of college from Stanford University as the most touted QB prospect since John Elway. And guess what? He was on his way to a Hall of Fame career. As I said, 55-33 in 88 games. But the Indianapolis Colts went to an AFC championship game. Yes, got promptly dump trucked by the New England Patriots, but at the same time took an Indianapolis Colts team to an AFC championship game, made and came back as the AFC or the AP Comeback Player of the Year. Andrew Luck has been a spectacular quarterback for the majority of his career. You can say at times he turned the football over too much. You can say at times he took too many risks down the football field. At times you could say he got into positions where he was getting beat up even outside of the pocket, from the times, even aside from the times that he was getting beat up inside of the pocket. But the competitiveness of an Andrew Luck, you remember the comeback playoff game that he had against the Kansas City Chiefs, where he led them on a super large comeback. I can't even remember the numbers, but he led them on a huge comeback to win a playoff game where he fumbled the ball and wound up scoring a touchdown after the recovery himself. Andrew Luck has given more than what he has needed to the game of football, and for the fans and for folks like Dan Dockich and the folks like Doug Gottlieb to sit on their Twitter, sit on their phone, sit in those stands and boo and say the kinds of idiotic things that they have said over the last 24 to 48 hours, to me screams narcissicity in the highest form by Dan Dockich, Doug Gottlieb, and who else said the same thing. Look, man, Andrew Luck doesn't owe us a darn thing. He laid his body on the line week after week for the Indianapolis Colts franchise, for those supposed fans of his, week after week. So if Andrew Luck decided that this was a time for him to go, more power to him. Because look, man, this is what should really start to bother folks. The fact that a guy at 29 years of age, we've seen folks retire young. Barry Sanders retired at the age of, I think it was 30 or 31. And then Calvin Johnson retired at the age of 30. Andrew Luck retiring at the age of 29. The age that dudes are starting to retire because of the mental anguish and the physical pain that they are dealing with is becoming less and less. When you start to see the age of these players decrease, that should tell you something. I'm not saying that football is going away anytime soon because it's a billion-dollar industry and a lot of folks love football and there's too many folks that love playing the game of football. But this should be a loud and clear message to individuals who play the game of football, man. This stuff is painful and it hurts. And if your body can't respond, there's no reason to continue, especially if you made yourself a bunch of money the way that Andrew Luck has. And there's no reason to continue to put your body in a position to where after you get done playing for 15 years, you can't hardly walk. See Earl Campbell and the way he has to live his life these days after the amount of punishment that he took for playing over a decade of football in the NFL. And that was back in the 70s. Just imagine how hard, how fast, and how quick these guys are today and to deal with that kind of punishment. You say, Kevin, the game's a little bit safer, this, that, and the third. Guess what? It's still painful. And for Andrew Luck to be a quarterback where the rules of the game of the NFL are skewed toward the quarterback to ensure that a quarterback doesn't have to retire at the age of 29 because he's getting beat up behind an offensive line or getting beat up, period. That is what we're dealing with Andrew Luck. In today's NFL, a quarterback in the prime of his life, as far as his football career is concerned, decided enough was enough to walk away because he had dealt with too much physical pain at the quarterback position. That should resonate with you and think about the idea that a quarterback has to retire because he got beat up too much in today's NFL. So, all of you who have had something negative to say about Andrew Luck's retirement, shut up. It's not your life to live. He did what he had to do. We applaud him for it. At least I do. This is Clutch Talk Sports Radio live on the Sports Radio American Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app. Coming up next, Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota joins us to talk more about Andrew Luck's retirement and all things Minnesota Viking football next on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live. So this is real Clutch Sports Talk, CT Sports Radio Live. We'll be right back.
Josephine seems to be coming along on the harpsichord.
Indeed. Did I tell you the Viscount got a new powdered wig and fainting couch?
Yes. Yes, you did. He put the couch in the parlor, if I'm not mistaken.
Indeed. Do you need a new powdered wig?
No, thank you. This one is fairly new. Unless you find it wanting in some way.
No, it's nice.
Thank you.
19th century Victorian life was boring. It only seems interesting because we watch literary adaptations and everything else on DirecTV. Get 45,000 shows and movies. Get DirecTV. More for your period drama thing. That's our thing.
Requires subscription to DirecTV's top-tier premier programming package. Other packages have fewer titles. Restrictions apply. Visit DirecTV.com.
Snickers presents 3 p.m. Brainstorms, world-changing ideas that unfortunately were conceived during the hungriest time of day. Like this one from June 1992.
I think we should redo all airport bathrooms.
Okay.
Let's start by replacing the toilet flushers with laser sensors. Can we get those?
Well, flushers have worked fine for 100 years, but lasers sound fun. What if they don't work?
How about we get a really tiny button that's impossible to find?
Ooh, you know what? Or we could startle people with sudden random flushes.
There you go.
Let's do both. What else?
Replace all the paper towels with fans?
Smart, yes, that'll save energy.
No, because I think they should run 10 minutes longer than necessary and have the heat and force of a jet engine.
Fun. Love jets. What about sinks?
Let's give them non-functioning sensors.
Non-functioning, okay, but then no one can wash their hands.
Right, and then they won't waste our hot air drying their hands. They'll just leave.
I love it. Change every airport bathroom on Earth.
Yeah.
I like that.
Thanks.
Don't brainstorm hungry. A reminder from your friends at Snickers.
Blood orange, you funky. Blood orange, you fresh. Blood orange, you zesty. Blood orange, you the best.
Febreze now has blood orange.
From the kitchen to the car.
You can
Febreze, fresh. Let's try it. Zesty. Blood orange and spritz. Breathe happy Febreze.
You are listening to Sports Radio America. Sports, anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back in the club. App on your iPhone, Android, the phone. Get the full press. You can follow us on all over Twitter, Instagram, and Radio. You can also get the phone number is 888-444-0570. That's 888-444-0570. And on the line with us, he's an NFL columnist covering all things for the Minnesota Vikings for The Athletic, Minnesota friend of the program. His name is Arif Hasan. Arif, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
Thank you so much for taking the time with us today on the Clutch Time Sports Radio live show once again. Arif, we'll just jump right in with you. Before we get to the all things for the Minnesota Vikings, what was your reaction to Andrew Luck announcing his retirement after 7 seasons on Saturday evening?
I mean, what was anybody's reaction? It was shocking. I didn't expect it. And, I've been pretty critical of how the Colts have handled the Andrew Luck injury saga over the past couple of years. But I didn't really think it would, culminate in this. It was more just I want access to actual information and not what seems to be, misdirection. But I guess it ran even deeper than that. I guess mismanagement was such a huge problem that it impacted him kind of mentally. And then after I read more about it and I saw his press conference, it's hard to do anything but feel for him. Obviously, the decision was very difficult. If he could have made the decision earlier, he would have. He's not the kind of guy to kind of string things along. I think he should be kind of commended for everything he's done for the Colts.
Andrew Luck announcing his retirement after 7 seasons on Saturday evening, shocking not only the NFL world, but the entire sports world, walking away from the Colts at the age of 29. We're talking with Arif Hasan, NFL columnist for The Athletic, Minnesota, covering all things for the Minnesota Vikings today on the Clutch Time Sports Radio live show. Well, let's switch things, obviously, to the Minnesota Vikings. Another year now coming into with Kirk Cousins as the starting quarterback for this football team. For you, Arif, what has been the feeling around Kirk Cousins this season now that he is getting some of those weapons back, namely a guy like a Dalvin Cook and others, to really help him in this offense going into this season?
Well, there's definitely a fair bit of optimism about what the offense can do, not just because they've got Dalvin Cook back, but also because they've got a scheme that he's much more familiar with. It resembles some of the stuff that he did at Washington. It also emphasizes a lot of his strengths, like play action. So there's a lot of optimism, but there's also this kind of sense that there's definitely going to be a form of accountability, because if he doesn't produce under, the most ideal conditions the Vikings can offer him, then the Vikings have to make, kind of serious decisions about what they're going to do with the draft going forward. So I think there's optimism, but there's also just a sense of, it's time to put up or shut up.
For Kirk Cousins, going into a brand new season, has an opportunity with some new offensive weapons, but more importantly, an opportunity to do something comfortable in an offense that he likes. We'll see if that produces quality results on the football field going forward for the Minnesota Vikings. We're talking with Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. Let's talk about Dalvin Cook real fast. Had an 85-yard touchdown run against the Arizona Cardinals on Saturday. How excited is this Vikings team about the potential of Dalvin Cook, given if he can stay healthy going into the season to really help this offense?
Oh, they're tremendously excited. He's clearly meant to be kind of a centerpiece of the offense. And it's kind of funny. Mike Zimmer wanted him in the game because he wanted him to take a couple of tackles so that he could kind of get a feel for football. And he just, didn't get tackled, which, has its own kind of benefits. So, Zimmer's always been adamant that, you take a look at Cook, whether it's at Florida State or with the Vikings, he's a home run machine. He doesn't really care about, and this was in the context of like not caring about the combine, but it's very clear he's an explosive playmaker. He can turn an 8-yard gain into a 40-yard gain, and it's something that, a lot of zone running offenses, they typically don't always have. They're really focused on those consistent 4 or 5-yard gains, and he can really turn those into something else. And so they're really excited, not just for what he can do in terms of what's available to him on the ground and his ability to kind of be a touchdown threat from anywhere, but also, what effect, if any, that has on their ability to more effectively sell play action and things like that.
Dalvin Cook looking to have a tremendous season, returning from knee injury and now putting himself in position to really give this Vikings offense some dynamic playmaking ability with Kirk Cousins leading at the quarterback position. We're talking with Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota today on the CT Sports Radio live show. A lot of folks consider Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen probably the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. What are their expectations going into another year as they get more comfortable with Kirk Cousins in this offense now?
I think both of them expect themselves to be, 1,000-yard receivers again. I think Diggs fell just shy of that, and Thielen kind of hit that with some room to spare. But and they're centerpieces of the passing game. The Vikings are moving back into kind of 12 personnel, which means that there's only really going to be 2 receivers on the field for a good chunk of the snaps, which means that even more of the passing load is going to be on them than in the past, where sometimes, they've had Aldrick Robinson or some other third receiver to kind of relieve the tension. They both expect to be kind of touchdown magnets. They both expect to be, significant, consistent, and reliable members of the offense. But the offense does look like it's going to be more explosive this year. They're pushing the ball down the field a lot more. And so I think we're going to see kind of these bigger highlight plays from them this year than we did last year.
Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, 2 of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Adam Thielen getting a nice reward, obviously continuing to grow as a wide receiver for this football team. Kirk Cousins has some really nice weapons to be able to throw to this coming season as they move forward in Kevin Stefanski's offense this season. We're talking with Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota today on the Close Talk Sports Radio Live show. My name is Kevin Gray, host of CT Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network. Moving to the defensive side of things, this is a defense that has a lot of stars on the defensive side of the football. For you, though, who has been an X factor for you that has stood out in camp so far that will give the Vikings a real opportunity to continue to improve on the defensive end?
Yeah, well, I think, like you said, they've got stars at every level. They've got Pro Bowl players at every level of the defense. I think, without a doubt, the best player on defense in camp has been Danielle Hunter. Whether or not it's because he's going up against, the starting right tackle or the backup right tackle or the backup to the backup right tackle, he's also been, really remarkable in the preseason in terms of his ability to get pressure. And he's always been a really solid run defender. That was his primary role at LSU. He looks like he's kind of turned on another gear, if that's even possible for him. He hasn't even turned 25 yet. And he's kind of constantly in the backfield harassing the offense. So he's probably going to be the critical factor, especially on third downs, that's going to help, maintain that defense and, kind of bring it back to the number 1 spot it had a couple of years ago. And then I think kind of the rest of the defense will flow from there.
Hunter had a tremendous season last year, had 14.5 sacks for this Minnesota Viking football team, looking to continue to put pressure on the quarterback, but also do big things in the run game. Danielle Hunter looking to lead this defensive line for this Minnesota Viking defense. We're talking with Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota, covering all things for the Vikings today on the Clutch Tower Sports Radio live show. Arif, a real interesting year for Mike Zimmer coming up, obviously, as head coach of this football team. A lot of expectations last year didn't meet up necessarily to those expectations, and with Kirk Cousins struggling. For you, how important is this a year for him to show that this team is moving toward the championship direction that this team expects to have as they move forward?
I think it's pretty important. I think there's a lot of people who will say that he's on the hot seat if they start out kind of slow. I don't know if I believe that, just because he's been through so much as a head coach in terms of like all the problems that he's had to face and the number of quarterbacks he's had to go through, that I think the Wolves will give him a little bit of a longer leash. But that's not to say that it's not going to kind of define whether or not they want to give him an additional contract extension. He just signed another one for another year. So it's going to be important in terms of kind of how the Vikings view his long-term security as a coach, what they think of him as a coach overall. If he can't kind of get it turned around this year, and there's not really many injury problems that they can point to as like a reason that his team isn't doing well, it's going to be kind of trouble for him going forward. So it's an important year, but I don't think it's quite as significant in terms of whether or not he's going to be on the team as a lot of people do.
A very important year for Mike Zimmer, as this team has a lot of expectations coming into this year. They get started on Sunday, September 8th, with a game against the Atlanta Falcons, so we'll see how Mike Zimmer and his team go moving forward. We're talking with Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. Arif, overall expectations for this football team as you kind of run down their schedule. Their first couple of games are at home against the Atlanta Falcons and on the road against the Green Bay Packers, and then the Raiders, Bears, and Giants for their first 5 games. What are the overall expectations for you based on your observations from this team in training camp and the talent level that they have on both sides of the football? How good can this team really be this season?
The team is definitely competing for a playoff spot. Vegas odds had them as even odds with both the Bears and the Packers to kind of win the division at some point earlier in the offseason. And I think that's something that's kind of well within grasp. I think that personally, I think they're a 10-win team. I think they can win 12 games. If they maintain consistency and stay focused and all that. So that's kind of where they're at. Obviously, these first couple of games will kind of define the character and tenor of the season for them. The fact that they've got, some teams on the schedule that look a little bit easier, like the Raiders, and some teams on the schedule that look a little bit more difficult, like the Bears, that is probably going to give us a better shape for what the Vikings look like than I think a lot of teams. I think there's going to be a lot more certainty about the Vikings early in the season than we're used to seeing in football.
As we said, the Vikings open up with a tough couple of first games with the Atlanta Falcons and the Green Bay Packers. Get to see Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers in back-to-back games, so that defense will definitely get tested at the very beginning of this season to see what the Vikings truly have. We're talking with Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. Arif, final question for you before we let you get out of here. Who's the most important player for this team, whether it be offensively or defensively, that's really going to determine how good this Minnesota Viking team is going to be this season to give them a chance to go deep into the playoffs?
Well, I think it's the quarterback. I always think it's the quarterback, Kirk Cousins. But if I, go beyond that and say, that maybe the second most important player, the player that you would expect to be as important as he ends up being, I think it might be Anthony Barr. I think more than most linebackers, he's really important for how they design the scheme because he can always be a threat to rush the passer. He's been so important for the way they design their third downs, and his athleticism has been a critical part of designing the way they shut down screens and typical responses to what they normally do on third down. I mean, they're one of the best third down defenses we've ever seen over the past couple of years. And so the fact that they can get that because of what their linebackers do, their ability to cover running backs, tight ends, downfield, etc., that I think stems from the kinds of things that both Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks can do, but especially the threat that Anthony Barr has to either rush the passer or cover deep downfield.
Anthony Barr looks to be a tremendous help for this defense as they move forward. This defense is going to be called upon to do quite a bit this season to help Kirk Cousins in this offense be the best that they can be in this tough NFC North division. Arif, tell the folks that they can find you on your social media and your platform, sir.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I only tweet, honestly, at Arif Hasan NFL. It's ARIFHASAN NFL. And that's where I, post all my stuff.
Arif does a tremendous job covering this Minnesota Viking football team. It should be a very busy year for him as his team has a lot of expectations competing, as I mentioned, in this tough AFC North. He is an NFL columnist for the Athletic Minnesota. Good enough to join us today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live show. His name is Arif Hasan. Arif, thank you so much for the time and enjoy this new season for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Again, that is Arif Hasan, NFL columnist for the Athletic Minnesota. Good enough to join us today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live show. Big season for these Minnesota Vikings coming up. A lot of talent on both sides of the football, but this thing starts and ends with your man Kirk Cousins. Can he put himself in a position, new offensive coordinator, Kevin Stefanski, with an offense that he's much more familiar with? He's got a lot of talent on the offensive side of the football with Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, a returning Dalvin Cook, even Irv Smith Jr., the rookie tight end out of Alabama. Kyle Rudolph is still there at the tight end position. There is no excuse for this Minnesota Viking football team to not have a chance to win the NFC North. I know how good Chicago is with that defense, with Khalil Mack, obviously Aaron Rodgers, and the Detroit Lions are, well, you know, the Detroit Lions. So there's a really good shot for this Minnesota Viking football team to really do some damage this year in the NFC North. Again, thank you to Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota for joining us today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live show. This is Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app, and also live on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio. You can see our show currently streaming live. When we come back, got to recap week number 3 of the preseason, including, does Antonio Brown have a deal for his new helmet? We'll talk about that and more next on the CT Sports Radio Live show. This is real Clutch Sports Talk, CT Sports Radio Live. We'll be right back.
For decades, John invested all his money into floppy disks. It was on his to-do list to one day reinvest in energy and pharmaceuticals, but I guess he never got around to it. When John checked the balance of his 401k, it was 75 cents.
We just told you a scary story in 15 seconds. Imagine what Geico can do in 15 minutes. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. So go to geico.com.
With Simple Mobile, you get unlimited wireless with 5 gigs of data at 4G LTE speeds for just $60. That's unlimited wireless on your phone with your number and 5 gigs of data at 4G LTE speeds. So, what do 5 gigs at 4G LTE speeds for $60 sound like? They sound like more 40-character messages, more angry ducks, flappy deals, and dead zombies. More selfies, welfies, and ussies to share.
Time for a selfie!
More than music, movies, and books you want to download. More of us guys never having to ask for directions.
Arriving.
More right swipes and a lot of left swipes.
Oh my god, no.
And more time with that weird app you don't want anyone to know you have.
You definitely don't want to hear the sound we have for that.
So get unlimited wireless with more 4G LTE data on your phone with Simple Mobile. Visit your local dealer or check simplemobile.com. Simple Mobile. Change your SIM. Change your game. Includes a fixed amount of high-speed data per month. Month equals 30 days. Other restrictions apply. Refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at simplemobile.com.
Hi, Tom Bodette here. Apparently it's super cool to do this voice when you're trying to be real serious. It's called vocal fry. Yeah. So I just want to stress how at Motel 6 you can get a great room for a great low price. How do they keep this up? I feel like I have mono. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the lozenge on for you. Light, I meant light.
You are listening to Sports Radio America. Sports, anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back into Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, presented by Media MPC. Go to www.mediampc.com and download the app on your iOS and Android device. get your mobile press conference on with media and PC. You can follow the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show all over social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CT Sports Radio. And you can also follow our show by downloading it and subscribing to our free podcast on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you get your podcast. Please search the words Clutch Talk Sports Radio. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch our show currently streaming live right now on the CT Sports Radio live show, coming off of a tremendous weekend of action across the entire sporting landscape. Congratulations to River Ridge, Louisiana, for winning the Little League World Series this weekend. The Louisiana squad making the Little League World Series for the very first time ever, and they won the whole thing. They won the whole thing, so congratulations to River Ridge, Louisiana, for winning the Little League World Series this past weekend. Also, congratulations are in order for your man Roy McIlroy, who won the FedEx Cup Championship this weekend out at the Tour Championship. Get this, Memphis, for Roy McIlroy's 4 days of work this past weekend. My man earned himself a cool $15 million for winning the FedEx Cup Championship this weekend. How about
By the way, that's in Memphis. Just pointing out that that's one of the most amazing donations also, what they do with that FedEx Championship down there. Also, the St. Jude's in Memphis as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can win on that tour, but the St. Jude's Challenge and the FedEx Cup, FedEx being, of course, in Memphis. That's where the headquarters is. I think that both, I mean, FedEx pays out a lot. St. Jude's paid out a lot for a good reason. And you win a lot of money if you know how to play golf. I was on the golf course, by the way, this weekend. I did not win $15 million, Kevin. Right. I actually lost about 6 balls into the water hazards.
Oh, okay.
And
just giving it back.
Posted exactly. I was giving money back. I wasn't winning any money. I was just giving it back.
Okay. Well, speaking of giving it back, Jimmy Garoppolo didn't give back any footballs to the opposing team. Jimmy Garoppolo and the San Francisco 49ers played this past weekend against the Kansas City Chiefs. Jimmy Garoppolo played much, much better. If you remember, Jimmy Garoppolo was played really terrible in his first preseason outing. Went 1 of 6 for like 0 yards and a 0 QB rating. Played much better against the Kansas City Chiefs. They got a 27-17 win in week number 3 of preseason action across the NFL. Of course, this weekend was dominated by the Andrew Luck news. So Jimmy Garoppolo played better. So encouraging signs for the San Francisco 49ers. Had a little Sunday night football. Memphis Steelers got an 18-6 win over Queen Berger's Tennessee Titans. Ben Roethlisberger threw a touchdown pass to your man Juju Smith-Schuster, who, of course, is the number 1 wide receiver on this football team after the departure of your man Antonio Brown. And Memphis, speaking of your man Antonio Brown, man Antonio Brown lost his 2nd consecutive grievance against the NFL to wear his old helmet. Of course, Helmet Gate has been dominating the headlines on Hard Knocks and for the Oakland Raiders this year, who had training camp out in Napa Valley, California. The Oakland Raiders playing in their final season before they move on to the Las Vegas area to play their football in Las Vegas starting in 2020 next year. But the biggest star on this football team has been dealing with a big problem with his helmet this training camp. But apparently all is well that ends well for your man Antonio Brown. He was denied his appeal for a 2nd time to wear his old helmet going into this year. He'd been looking for a waiver for this year to wear his old helmet while he tried to figure out a new one to wear going forward because, of course, his old helmet is not approved any longer by the NFL. But guess what, Memphis? All of this circumstance, all of this ridiculousness surrounding Antonio Brown's helmet apparently is going to lead to a very lucrative contract endorsement for a helmet company, per his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, who said for Antonio Brown yesterday, quote, as a result of all the publicity accrued from our efforts to get him to wear that helmet, his old helmet, he has multiple offers on the table right now from various companies to custom make a helmet for him and pay him quite a bit of money. Quote, we have found, without getting into specifics, some very suitable alternatives. We're very excited. Antonio will be wearing a helmet. He won't be missing any time, and he will be getting paid a lot of money to do so. It's sort of a happy ending, even though he won't be able to wear the old helmet, end quote. Look, man, I told you, Antonio Brown wasn't about to miss some football games over a helmet because there was $30 million on the line for your man Antonio Brown with respect to figuring out what kind of helmet he was going to wear. And guess what? He figured it out. And not only did he figure it out, he's going to get paid a bunch of money to wear a helmet for somebody else to endorse him with. Look, man, Antonio Brown, I said on this show, not a bad guy, not a, he's a good guy, just not a very smart guy at times, sometimes a little naive. Made a good business decision this time around. Look, man, the amount of stink that has been made about this helmet, the amount of free publicity that this whole story has gotten, whether it be on Hard Knocks, whether it be everybody talking about it, or Antonio Brown driving the conversation himself by filing 2 separate grievances to try and wear his old helmet, has obviously put him in a space now where a lot of folks are like, look, man, we see that there's some money involved in this. We could potentially get Antonio Brown to endorse our helmet product and get him a custom-made helmet, and guess what? All's well that ends well, because your man Mike Mayock, the GM of the Oakland Raiders, your man John Gruden, the head coach of the Oakland Raiders, had it up to here with Antonio Brown and his helmet. Even Mike Mayock declaring, look, man, either you're all in or you're all out, because we're sick of dealing with this helmet issue that you've been trying to get over on us in the NFL. And the NFL's like, nah, Antonio Brown, you can't wear the helmet. Well, Antonio Brown says, well, okay, well, let's try this grievance thing again. The NFL's like, no, Antonio, you can't wear the helmet. Go find another one. And guess what? He looks like he's found another one. He's going to get that $30 million. He's going to be on the football field. And that's really important for the Oakland Raiders, who need Antonio Brown on the football field, okay? He is the biggest player, the biggest star that they got on this team. They just got rid of Doug Martin, put him on the IR, and put him on waivers to release him. So they've got another running back that they've just gotten rid of. So now look, man, this whole thing with Antonio Brown's been ridiculous. Absolutely insane, if you ask me, in my opinion. We literally spent 2 weeks talking about a helmet because Antonio Brown simply couldn't get it through his head that, look, I can't wear this helmet. This is not going to be a thing for me to be able to do going forward. So guess what? I can't wear it. But now, guess what? He found one. All is well in the world, and Antonio Brown's going to be on the football field, Memphis. Congratulations, Antonio Brown, for finding a helmet and putting all of this ridiculousness to bed, because quite frankly, it was annoying. And I got sick of talking about it. And a lot of folks got sick of talking about a helmet. But guess what? We're done now with that. We can move on, and the Raiders can move on. Now, let's move on to the New York football Giants. Okay? Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones played well against the Cincinnati Bengals. This was, on Thursday night? Now, a couple of days later, and a lot of stink has been made about some comments that your man Pat Shurmur made about the New York Giants quarterback situation. Pat Shurmur did declare, though, Eli Manning, the 2-time Super Bowl champion Eli Manning, will be the starter going into this season. That much is clear now. But what is also clear is that your man Pat Shurmur loves him some Daniel Jones, okay? And look, he went all how you like me now on the media with respect to Daniel Jones. Look, man, this is what I know about Daniel Jones. He's played well against 2s and 3s, okay? He looked good against the Cincinnati Bengals. 9 of 11, 141 yards, led a touchdown drive. Looked good against 2s and 3s, okay? We will see how Eli Manning... Look, Eli Manning's got a short leash going into this year, and we will see how the Giants move forward with respect to Saquon Barkley, who's one of the best running backs in the NFL. That wide receiver core has been depleted. No Odell Beckham. That dealt with a lot of injuries this preseason with respect to their wide receiver core. So Eli Manning has got to figure out real quick who he's going to throw the ball to and who consistently he can get to catch the football, because that is going to be key for how long Eli Manning stays on the football field, because your man Pat Shurmur is ready for your man Daniel Jones to be on the football field. No matter how much he says Eli Manning is the starter moving forward, there is a short leash on your man Eli Manning, because folks love them some Daniel Jones. I'm not there yet. I don't know if I'll ever get there on Daniel Jones, only because we've seen this movie before. Let the kid work. Let the kid figure it out. And if he is what we think he might be, based on what we've seen in this preseason so far, maybe the Giants have their heir apparent to what Eli Manning has been over the last 16 years. Speaking of quarterback situations, the Washington football team has declared their QB situation complete. Case Keenum will be the starter for the Washington football team this season. Dwayne Haskins struggled at times during this preseason, looked good at times during this preseason, but I think Washington is doing the best thing for their situation right now, which is put Case Keenum in as the starter, let him figure things out for this Washington football team that does have Adrian Peterson. Really feel good story with Darius Geis. Darius Geis coming back off of a torn ACL last year during his rookie season. Didn't even have a chance to play last year. Came back, played in his first preseason action this past weekend. Looked really good for the Washington football team. So happy for Darius Geis out of LSU. Looks like he's going to be okay at the running back position. But to give this team an opportunity to at least try and win some football games, because this Washington team is really, really bad. Okay, they're really, really bad. Case Keenum's got to be the guy right now, and allow Dwayne Haskins to sit, to learn, and hopefully they won't have to use him that much, because that team is not good. That whole Trent Williams situation with what he's got going on, he's not coming back to play for Washington. Jordan Reed has got a concussion now. His potential 7th documented concussion that he's potentially dealing with. Washington's got a bunch of issues. No reason to put Dwayne Haskins on the field right now to get him killed back there behind that offensive line. It's okay. He'll be all right moving forward. Baker Mayfield didn't look so hot against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a pretty ugly football game. The Buccaneers winning that game 13-12. Baker Mayfield did not look good. Normally good, not good against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So there's that. The Browns will be okay, though. They got a lot of stars on that football team. They'll be okay. Buffalo Bills winning 24-20 over the Detroit Lions this past weekend. We will see how Josh Allen continues to move forward there for that football team. And we'll talk about the Cowboys a little bit later on in the show. The Cowboys getting a 34-0 win over the Houston Texans in the Cowboys' first preseason game at home during this 2019 campaign. Joe Thomas with a blocked punt and recovery for a touchdown. Dak Prescott and Michael Gallup looking to get on the same page as one another. Tony Pollard, yes, played again because your man Ezekiel Elliott, who we'll talk a little bit about a little bit later on in our show, actually coming up in our next segment. We're going to talk a little more Ezekiel Elliott. His contract situation may be coming to an end here soon. So we will see the latest on Ezekiel Elliott here coming up here in just a few moments. But a lot of look, man. One thing I learned from this weekend's preseason action, okay? This preseason thing might not be a thing going forward for the long-term future of the NFL. A lot of teams sat out a lot of their starters this weekend. Normally, preseason game number 3 is where you see starters into the second and third quarters in a majority of these games. Dak Prescott didn't even play into the second half of Saturday night's game against the Houston Texans.
Right.
Deshaun Watson was out after the first couple of series for the Houston Texans. These teams are making conscious decisions not to play their starters and look, man, they're going to use, looks like weeks 1 and 2 as kind of those feel-out games. To me, which is kind of interesting, especially in a division like the NFC South, I don't know if you can be throwing away games for the sake of getting folks ready in actual NFL games versus, look, I know injuries have been really a storyline as they are every preseason. Speaking of the Houston Texans, they lost out on Lamar Miller, who tore his ACL against the Dallas Cowboys this weekend. Injuries as they are every preseason. take a toll on football teams. AJ Green is still dealing with torn ligaments in his ankle, out the first 6 to 8 weeks. So on the one hand, the preseason may be going away, or at least shortened. At least it should be. But at the same time, man, we won't see a lot of these guys on the football field until week 1 of the regular season of the NFL, which is very interesting because normally we see these guys a little bit more often during the preseason. Not this year. Teams are not taking chances, and I don't necessarily blame them, especially when you see a lot of guys go down with injuries that they didn't necessarily have to go down with if they had not been on the football field to start with in a meaningless preseason game. So the NFL is going to have to take a real hard look over the next couple of years about how many preseason games they will play going forward. To me, it might be time to reduce this thing down to 2. That doesn't mean, though, you add 2 more regular season games. That's what you don't do. I don't want the NFL folks to think, oh, well, let's reduce the preseason from 4 games to 2 games, and then let's add 2 more regular season games onto the regular season. No, that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create.
You know what I would like?
Yeah.
I mean, on your point, I would actually like to see them reduce the number of preseason games and then add in bye weeks, like bigger bye weeks or longer bye weeks throughout the season, especially on Thursday night games. Like give them a full week off right before that Thursday night game so that the game itself is actually better and they have more rest afterwards. Add in bye weeks throughout the year so that these players stay healthy. That's what I would like. Can we reduce the number of teams or the games at the front end, give some bye weeks throughout the season so some teams are off during certain weeks, and increase the amount of time off in between parts of the season, kind of divide it up into 3 and have like maybe instead of 1 bye week, have 2 bye weeks or maybe even 3 bye weeks throughout the season and, and focus on the players' health, all these players' health throughout the season.
Yeah, that would be ideal. I'm sure players would love that. But I'm sure that will have to be collectively bargained with respect to if that could happen. But, preseason week number 3 is in the books. Teams are going to be rounding out their 53-man rosters as we head toward now the final week of August. Hard to believe that next Sunday is September 1st. NFL football right around the corner. This is the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show on the Sports Radio America Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app, and live on YouTube. Coming up next at the top of the hour, the latest on Ezekiel Elliott. He had some words today about how long he thinks he's going to be a Dallas Cowboy. We'll tell you what that means for the ramifications of his contract situation next at the top of the hour on the Sports Radio America Network. This is Real Clutch Sports Talk, CT Sports Radio Live. We'll be right back at the top of the hour on the Sports Radio America Network. Come back with us.
My horse has got some kind of problem with his foot.
Oh, no. Well, I hope he's okay.
Me too.
Do you know what Cookie's making for supper tonight?
Beans, I reckon.
That makes sense.
That harmonica's nice.
Yeah, that's soothing. Oh, I'm thinking about getting a new hat.
I think you should.
Cowboy times were boring. They only seem interesting because we watch westerns and everything else on DirecTV. Get 45,000 shows and movies. Get DirecTV. More for your old movies thing. That's our thing.
Requires subscription to DirecTV's top-tier premier programming package. Other packages have fewer titles. Restrictions apply. Visit DirecTV.com.
And now, the worst commercial ever. Hi, I am Justin Galvin, retired athlete from your local ball team. So I know a thing or two about insuring a landscaping business. I trust the pros, commercial auto and business insurance through Progressive. Get customized insurance solutions that'll hit a grand slam home run for you. We done? A totally mailed-in celebrity endorsement. Awful. Whereas commercial auto and business insurance through Progressive is anything but. Visit progressivecommercial.com to quote today.
When you're straightforward, people can tell. When you're doing an ad for Old Spice Cooling with Mint Body Wash, you should probably mention it. Old Spice Cooling with Mint Body Wash. Now Walmart.
This is Shaquille O'Neal, you know Shaq Diesel, Superman, Big Aristotle, Big Cactus, Big Shamrock. If you're not listening to Sports Radio America, play Shaq Fu.
Welcome back to Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live. Now here's your host, Kevin Gray.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, presented by Media MPC. Go to www.medianpc.com and download the app on your iOS and Android device and get your mobile press conference on with Media MPC. You can follow the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live show all over social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CET Sports Radio. And visit ClutchTalkSportsRadio.com. That is ClutchTalkSportsRadio.com for everything for the CET Sports Radio Live show. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at YouTube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio. And you can watch our show currently streaming live on YouTube. If you want to get in on the conversation, the phone number is 888-444-0570. That's 888-444-0570. That is the Clutch Talk Sports Radio phone line if you want to get in on the conversation this afternoon. My producer, Memphis Spence, along for the ride with me today on the CET Sports Radio Live show, coming off of a tremendous weekend of action across the entire sporting landscape. Again, if you want to get in on the conversation, the phone number is 888-444-0570. The Cowboys want Ezekiel Elliott on the football field, and they want him on the field soon. Your man Ezekiel Elliott has been holding out throughout the entirety of Dallas Cowboys training camp. This preseason has not been on the football field. It wasn't like we were going to see him on the football field anyway, but at the same time, the Dallas Cowboys would like to see your man on the field prior to week 1 when they take on the New York Football Giants. And Ezekiel Elliott, who has been training in Cabo San Lucas as he gets himself ready for this season, has uttered some words for Maxim magazine as he looks to put himself in position to become what he believes is the highest paid running back in the NFL. Now, there obviously, as we look at the timeline between Ezekiel Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys, it's gone something like this. Earlier, prior to the training camps starting for the Dallas Cowboys, your man Ezekiel Elliott, there were whispers that your man was going to hold out. Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk said, look, man, don't be surprised if Zeke's holding out. Don't be surprised if he's going to spend his time in Cabo getting himself ready for the NFL season because he's going to hold out. Guess what? Ezekiel Elliott has been holding out. He's been holding out for a new contract, leaping in front of Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper, who are both due new contracts themselves. Dak Prescott entering into the final year of his contract. Amari Cooper into the final year of his contract. Also, Ezekiel Elliott still has 2 years, about $13 million left on his rookie deal. Ezekiel Elliott says, I'm not playing no more football until you make me the highest paid running back in the NFL. So Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones said, okay, all right, we'll work with you. We'll figure this out. Dallas Cowboys presented an initial offer to your man Ezekiel Elliott to make him one of the top 5 paid running backs in the NFL. Zeke and his team were like, nah, we don't want that. Jerry and Stephen Jones said, okay, fine, cool. I've earned the right to joke with Zeke. I've earned the right to do this, that, and the third, Jerry Jones says. So guess what? We're going to make you the second highest paid running back in the NFL. Zeke's like, nah, that's not going to happen right now. I want to be the highest paid running back in the NFL. Read my lips, Jerry. Highest paid back in NFL. Get that. And that's what Ezekiel Elliott wants to be. He is considered by most, including myself, to be the best running back in football. And your man Ezekiel Elliott had an interview with Maxim magazine that came out today talking about how he wants to spend his time in the NFL and who he wants to spend his time with. In Maxim magazine, Ezekiel Elliott today saying, quote, I love playing for the Dallas Cowboys. I love the organization, my teammates. I do want to be a Cowboy for the rest of my life, and hopefully that's a possibility. But even Emmitt Smith, the greatest running back ever, ended up going to play a couple of years for another organization. So it's just the nature of the game. But I want to be a Dallas Cowboy for as long as I can, end quote. Now, that is very interesting given what has transpired over the last several weeks with respect to your man Ezekiel Elliott. Look, Ezekiel Elliott's ideal situation, in his own words, is to remain a Dallas Cowboy for the entirety of his career. My hope as a Dallas Cowboy supporter and watcher of this football team is that Ezekiel Elliott plays the entirety of his career with the Dallas Cowboys. The only way the Dallas Cowboys have a legitimate opportunity at winning a Super Bowl is with Ezekiel Elliott on the football field. With all that being said, sir, go get your money. And I don't want to see Ezekiel Elliott on the field until he earns and gets what he believes is what he deserves to get, and which is to be the highest paid running back in the NFL. Jerry Jones and Steve Jones, the owner and CEO of this football team, have made these negotiations incredibly difficult by negotiating and saying things in the media. Peter King said something that I said a week ago today about why Jerry Jones should not joke with Ezekiel Elliott with respect to these contract negotiations. Just because you've earned the right, quote unquote, Jerry, to joke with Ezekiel Elliott with your Zeke who comment, it doesn't mean you have to use that tool of weaponry with respect to your negotiations with Ezekiel Elliott. Why? Ezekiel Elliott has earned the right to come to the table as a man, as a football player who's put his body on the line in his first 3 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys, and say, look, if Roger Goodell doesn't have his head up his tail for 6 games during the 2017 NFL season, I would have led the NFL in rushing for 3 consecutive seasons. So to me, Ezekiel Elliott's comments are right in line with what I've believed for the entire time with Ezekiel Elliott. He wants to be a Dallas Cowboy. He wants to be a Dallas Cowboy for as long as he possibly can. But guess what he understands most importantly about all of this? It's a business. And Jerry Jones is going to do what he feels like is best for the Dallas Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott is going to do what he feels like is best for Ezekiel Elliott and his pocketbook. And those two don't have to be mutually exclusive. Why? Because both have the same common goal with respect to the Dallas Cowboys, and that's to win football games. Now, when you look at what Ezekiel Elliott said in relation to the rest of this football team, it should give the Dallas Cowboys confidence to know that Ezekiel Elliott will be on the football field when Week 1 starts. All of this has been leading up to getting this done before Week 1. It's amazing how the pressure and the timeline of September the 8th puts pressure on deals to get done, especially when you know the proverbial straw that stirs the drink is your running back who you used a number 4 overall pick on in 2016, which was Ezekiel Elliott out of the Ohio State University. When you used a number 4 pick on a running back of that caliber, you are telling the rest of the NFL, we believe that this guy can take us to a Super Bowl. And guess what? The time for the Dallas Cowboys to potentially make a run to the Super Bowl is now. I don't care what Tony Pollard has done in this preseason. I don't care what the Cowboys think Tony Pollard could do in the future. What he is not is the best running back in football. And for this to take this long and to be this drawn out and for this to be this protracted, again, I was under the impression and expected for Ezekiel Elliott to not play in any preseason games. For who? For what? No reason to. But what I didn't expect is for the Cowboys to take this long in getting a deal done. We thought a deal would potentially get done this weekend with him potentially returning to the States to get something done. Marshall Faulk has now involved himself in these contract, not necessarily involved himself in the contract negotiations, but has put his 2 cents in on what he thinks Ezekiel Elliott should get because they share the same agent. Again, this is the crux of the matter. I don't care how much Jerry Jones has put on for Ezekiel Elliott. I don't care how many bones he's buried for Ezekiel Elliott. What he hasn't done is put Ezekiel Elliott in a position to feel confident the Cowboys will pay him what he's worth to this moment. Just because they've only offered him 2 contracts that will make him a top 5 paid running back or a top 2 paid running back. When the Dallas Cowboys know and when the rest of the NFL knows that Ezekiel Elliott is the best running back in football. Yes, Le'Veon Bell is a year removed and got $53.5 million. Yes, Saquon Barkley is an up-and-coming back who had a spectacular year last year for the New York Football Giants. Todd Gurley is in denial about the arthritic knee that he has, and yet the Los Angeles Rams still gave him $60 million. What I'm saying to you plainly and simply is this. Get it done, Jerry. The time is over for all the posturing. The time is out for all of the gesturing. It is time to get a deal done. And the longer this draws out for the Dallas Cowboys, the more money it's going to cost them because it gets closer to the beginning of the regular season, which means the pressure to get Ezekiel Elliott into the fold is going to continue to rise. And the more it continues to rise, the more leverage that Ezekiel Elliott starts to get. Well, you say, Kevin, this team is really good. They've got a chance to do some really special things without Ezekiel Elliott. Let me tell you something. If the Dallas Cowboys go out and lose week 1 and Ezekiel Elliott's not on the football field, the price tag went up. Don't let them lose the first 2 games of the regular season against their 2 biggest rivals in the NFL, in the Giants and in the Washington football team. Don't let them go to 0-2. It's very difficult for teams to come from 0-2 to make the playoffs, let alone make it to the Super Bowl. So the importance of getting Ezekiel Elliott into the fold is coming and has been coming as we get closer to September 8th. Now, again, Ezekiel Elliott is very cognizant of what has taken place with him over his first 3 years of the NFL. At times, has he put himself in bad positions to give the Cowboys pause in terms of the confidence of his ability to handle himself professionally off the football field? Of course he has. But more importantly, what he has done is provided the confidence that when he's on the football field, the Cowboys have the best chance of winning football games and, more importantly, making things easier for Dak Prescott. So what I take away from Ezekiel Elliott and his comments today, which ironically, the interview actually took place, according to Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports. This interview actually took place back in early July before all of this even started anyway. So you have to take into perspective what happened, what he was feeling then versus what has happened now. It still looks like that Ezekiel Elliott wants to remain long-term a member of the Dallas Cowboys. That much hasn't changed. What has changed is his feelings about how business continues to get done with respect to him moving forward, because the way that the Cowboys have handled this, I have not been a fan of. I'm not a guy who's a fan of negotiating this stuff in the media. I'm not a fan of these guys putting out quips and jokes about the player that has given himself of himself and given all of himself to a franchise for the first 3 years of his career and watch the NFL screw him over in 6 games in 2017. That is what Ezekiel Elliott has done for the Dallas Cowboys. And for the most part, he's been a model citizen off the football field. Yes, he's had some slip-ups. I'm not going to be naive and say he hasn't had some slip-ups. Obviously, he has. But compared to what the Dallas Cowboys have signed previously in the past and what they've dealt with previously with terms of players and character flaws and issues, Ezekiel Elliott is a saint, which means it's time to get a deal done and give him what he deserves. Because guess what? He doesn't want to play for anybody else. No player who has had the kind of success that Ezekiel Elliott has had in his first 3 seasons in the NFL would ever want to play for any other franchise, knowing that the franchise put him in the best position to accentuate the talents that he has. And the Cowboys have done that. They put a tremendous offensive line in front of him, and they put playmakers around him that will make him better on the football field. And in turn, he has produced at the highest level. He's averaged more yards than any other running back since stepping into the league in 2016, by far. That is no fluke. And he's continued to produce year after year. So for the Cowboys to treat these negotiations the way that they have, and knowing the kinds of words that Ezekiel Elliott has used about how he wants to stay with this franchise, this should give the confidence to the Cowboys even more that this is the guy. If we're ever going to pay a running back this kind of money, this is the running back to do it with. He gives us the best chance to win. He's the best player on this football team. But most importantly, he wants to be here. I can't think of any more better of a combination than those 3 things. The best player on a team who gives the team the best chance to win, but most importantly, wants to be here in Dallas for the duration of his career. It's simple. Pay him. Move on. Because guess who's tired of talking about this? I'm sick of talking about this because this should have been done a long time ago. Folks down here in Dallas, I have lost a lot of respect for some Dallas Cowboy fans down here who have talked about Ezekiel Elliott in the ways that they have about the importance of what he means to this football team and the fact that the Dallas Cowboys would much rather get rid of him than pay him what he's worth just because he's a running back. If we're talking about any other position in the National Football League than running back, we're not having this conversation, and nor would any Dallas Cowboy in their right mind have the conversation about Ezekiel Elliott's worth to this football team because we know what it is. And folks around the NFL know what it is. It's time to get it done. The time has now come, 2 weeks away from the beginning of the regular season. It's time to get it done, Jerry. Ezekiel Elliott wants to be a Dallas Cowboy, and that's the most important thing. He wants to be here. Get him on the field. Let him play, let him practice, and let's get this thing done. Because I'm tired of talking about it. Memphis, I'm sick of this. I'm tired of talking about it, okay? I'm tired of talking about it. Ezekiel Elliott.
By the way.
Yeah, go ahead.
By the way, should Dak Prescott get his $40 million a year now that a guy like Andrew Luck decided to gracefully bow out?
No, he's not a $40 million quarterback. I'm cool with $32 to $34 million. No problem. No problem out of me. It gets a little more than Carson Wentz, a little less than guys like Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers. Cool with that. $32 to $34 million. $32.5, $33 million. I'm cool with it. No problem. $40 million? No.
But could Dak walk and go maybe to the Colts? Do you think the Colts GMs would pay $40 million for him?
Dak's not going anywhere. There's nobody's going to pay him that kind of money. And he's weathered the storm of being the Dallas Cowboys quarterback very well. And I think he believes that he can still be the franchise leader for this team going forward. And I think he is, especially if Ezekiel Elliott's on the football field. If that's the case, Dak will be just fine. For $40 million, no. What we will see. Ezekiel Elliott owed a little over $3 million this season. This is Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio American Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app. Coming up next, Dwight Howard is officially a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. We'll talk about what that means for them next on the CT Sports Radio Live show. Come back with us.
You can learn to DIY just about anything.
Today I'm going to teach you how to defend yourself in a court of law. It's important to wear a fancy suit. That way, if they ask for evidence, you can point to it and say, Exhibit A.
After all, some things are better left to the pros, like buying a home, because without an expert to guide you, you could be headed for trouble.
If you're backed into a corner, throw out a few objections. Works every time.
So DIY yourself a favor and get Realtor. Head to Realtor.com/GetRealtor today. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Stop global swarming! Global swarming is real, and the mosquitoes are back. Call Mosquito Nix immediately, helping stop global swarming and protecting outdoor lifestyles for over 15 years. Now offering 15% off all custom mosquito systems that eliminates flying, biting, pesky mosquitoes and insects. 15% off all custom mosquito systems.
Mosquito Nix, the best in the business.
Find them at mosquitonix.com.
Offer for a limited time only.
How to be cool. Brought to you by Air King fans. Tip 91. Put on a leather jacket. Now take off the leather jacket, because those things are hot. Sit by an Air King fan until coolness is achieved. Now that's cool.
Clear the road. We have supplies inbound.
Are you a problem solver? The Air National Guard never shies from tomorrow's problems. We run to them. Ready for world-class military training and global missions? Help us design the blueprint for a better future. Serve close to home and build the life you want with the Air National Guard. Visit us at goang.com or call us at 1-800-TOGO-ANG.
You're listening to Sports Radio America.
Welcome back into Let's Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, presented by Media NPC. Go to www.medianpc.com and download the app on your iOS and Android device. Get to a mobile press conference on with Media NPC. Come on, the Let's Talk Sports Radio Live show all over social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CT Sports Radio. And you can also download and subscribe to our free podcast available on Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you get your podcast for free, just search the word Let's Talk Sports Radio. My producer, Mr. Fitz, along with the ride with me today on the CT Sports Radio live show, currently streaming live on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/Let's Talk Sports Radio, and you can subscribe to our channel today and watch our show currently streaming live on the CT Sports Radio live show. If you want to get in on the conversation, the phone number is 888-444-0570. That's 888-444-0570. That is the Clutch Talk Sports Radio phone line if you want to get in on the conversation. Comment from our last segment talking about Ezekiel Elliott from Ben on our YouTube live chat room says, like Jerry Jones has said, deadlines make deals. Yes, they do. Jerry Jones and Ezekiel Elliott trying to get something done with respect to his new contract. Speaking of new contracts, Dwight Howard has a new contract with the Los Angeles Lakers. I never thought I would say those words again on a show like this, but Dwight Howard is the newest member of the Los Angeles Lakers. That news broke late Friday after our show, and there's been a lot of reaction to Dwight Howard signing a non-guaranteed contract, including your man Shaquille O'Neal, who was asked by TMZ about Dwight Howard's signing with the Lakers, and Shaq promptly said, "Dwight, who is that?" In reference to Superman, of course, the moniker that Dwight Howard kind of stole from Shaq, kind of, I guess. But anyway, it's another conversation for another day. Dwight Howard, though, a member of the Los Angeles Lakers going into the upcoming NBA season. Before we get to Dwight Howard real quick, Team USA, oh boy, they lost 98-94 this past weekend to Team Australia for the first time in 13 years. The Team USA lost, losing for the first time ever to Team Australia. Normally good, our Team USA, not good against Patty Mills, who scored 30 points, including 10 straight to defeat Team USA in an exhibition game out there in Australia. They open up in the FIBA World Cup against China. So hopefully Team USA will get it together because they don't have anybody of significance on this roster to speak of with respect to Team USA. But again, back to Dwight Howard. So Dwight Howard now finds himself as a member of the Lakers, right? Dwight Howard, the meeting and workout was described. Now, I give Dwight Howard credit. The way that he went about this workout and the way he went about his meeting with the Los Angeles Lakers was very rookie-like. And I mean that in the most positive sense of the word. According to reports by The Athletic, Dwight Howard treated this meeting with the Los Angeles Lakers as if he were a rookie. He went through the paces and the workouts as if he was a guy fighting for a job, because guess what? Dwight Howard really is fighting for his basketball life right now. Had a very emotional meeting with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, Rajon Rondo, who made it very, very clear to Dwight Howard, look, all this off-the-court stuff, all this stuff about you being a cancer in the locker room, that stuff ends here. And if you get out of line in any shape, form, or fashion, sir, you will be cut. And not only will you be cut, you won't be paid either. Dwight Howard heard the message loud and clear from LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Rajon Rondo. This Laker team is still in a prime position to be a championship contender this year. And for Dwight Howard to take this as seriously as he did, given what the Lakers are going through right now, they had just signed DeMarcus Cousins on a veteran minimum contract. DeMarcus Cousins, was getting himself together. Had lost some weight, and then he tears his ACL in a workout in Vegas, left the Lakers scrambling to try and figure out what are they going to do at the center position, because they don't necessarily want JaVale McGee to play big minutes. Yes, JaVale McGee may ultimately be the starter for the Lakers, but they don't necessarily want him playing big minutes. They need a quality backup center for the Lakers, and Dwight Howard gives them that. The Lakers have brought in Dwight Howard, Joakim Noah, Mo Spates, who I didn't even know was still in the league, but nonetheless brought him in, and they settled on Dwight Howard. Now, I told you when rumors started to circulate that Dwight Howard might be a guy that the Lakers would consider. He does several things well, even with all the off-the-court stuff that befalls him. 1, he can rebound. 2, he can protect the paint. And 3, he can block shots. Dwight Howard, for all of the mess that he is off the court, which apparently it looks like he's getting together somewhat, he is still very talented on the basketball court. The question has never been about Dwight Howard's talent. The question has always been, does Dwight Howard have his head on straight long enough to be in a locker room, to not be a mess in the locker room, to cause division within the locker room, so much so that it derails teams from actually having a chance to win ball games long term. This is it for Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard is at the end of the basketball road for him. If he cannot assimilate into a locker room that has LeBron James, that also has Anthony Davis, that has Rajon Rondo in it, 3 guys who are trying to win right now. LeBron James, remember, is going into his, 17th season in the NBA this year, will be 35 years old by the time the end of December comes around. Anthony Davis coming over essentially on a 1-year deal because he's going to be a free agent after the end of this year, looking to make an impression on the city of Los Angeles. Veteran guys on this team, when we're talking about Rajon Rondo, JaVale McGee, and others that are on this basketball team. Then you got a young star and a guy in Kyle Kuzma looking to continue to make his way on this Laker basketball team. This is a team that's built to win now, and not to mention they've got a coaching staff that's veteran-laden with Frank Vogel, with Jason Kidd. These guys are motivated to win now, and the piece that could be the linchpin to a Laker team having a tremendous opportunity to win a championship this year is none other than Dwight Howard. It is amazing how full circle this whole thing has become. Who would have thought after him getting traded from Orlando and leaving and going to the Lakers, and then the basketball odyssey that he has become over the last several years, who knew that in 2019, going into the fall, I would say on this show that Dwight Howard could be the missing piece to the Lakers winning a championship. Because you have to remember how this all ended in 2012 and 2013. Your man Dwight Howard got thrown out of a playoff game in a 4-game sweep against the San Antonio Spurs. Your man Dwight Howard played in 76 games for the Los Angeles Lakers, and it was an abject disaster. Him and Kobe Bryant never got on the same page. Him and Steve Nash never really got on the same page. And that whole Laker roster was a disaster. And guess what? It played itself out by getting promptly swept out in the first round of the playoffs by the San Antonio Spurs, and Dwight Howard acted a nut getting thrown out of that basketball game in the elimination game, and then him getting ceremonially dismissed, and then the basketball odyssey continuing from there to Atlanta, to Charlotte, to somehow winding up in Washington. None of those stops worked out for him. There were times where he had really good years, where he had a decent year in Charlotte. There was a guy that had a 36.18 rebound game. Look, Dwight Howard's had spurts where he's reminded us of the dominant player that he once was. Remember, Dwight Howard is a former three-time defensive player of the year. Dwight Howard, by all accounts, is a Hall of Famer if his career ended today. Maybe not necessarily a Hall of Fame character, but as a basketball player, Dwight Howard would be a Hall of Famer if his career ended ultimately today. That is the kind of player that the Lakers hope that they're dealing with. Now, when you start looking at the bigger picture for the Lakers with respect to how they move forward with this, LeBron James's leadership is going to be tested like none other this year. You thought it was tested when he missed 17 games with that groin injury and was dealing with a bunch of young guys on a basketball team. This is the kind of team that LeBron James wants. Veterans who can shoot the basketball with young talent that can help carry this team toward a championship. The Lakers are going to have a starting five that comprises of something like this. LeBron James, maybe Dwight Howard, most likely JaVale McGee, Kyle Kuzma, Anthony Davis, and Danny Green. That's a lineup that can win a championship this year, given the experience of LeBron James, obviously, the mega talent that is Anthony Davis, the championship experience in role play, and the comfortability that Danny Green has had with LeBron James, and then winning 2 championships with the Spurs and, of course, the Toronto Raptors. Rajon Rondo is as motivated as ever, I believe, to win a championship right now. And then you add Dwight Howard to the mix. Dwight Howard understands that his time in the NBA is coming to a close. And if he can't get it together in this locker room with these players in this situation with the best opportunity that he's ever had to win in his NBA career, then he'll never get it together. Off the court, he is starting to figure some things out with respect to his personal life. Good for him. On the basketball court, though, this is where his most important career point, his career has come to a fork in the road at. This is his time to get it together and to figure it out. If he can, the Lakers are still a championship contender. But more importantly for Dwight Howard, this is the final opportunity for him to rehab his basketball image. More importantly, his off-the-court image is getting together. But at the same time, his basketball image is what has derailed him, especially and potentially caused the personal life spiral that he's had over the last several years also. Because his off-the-court, his inconsistency on the court has led to his off-the-court inconsistency also, which is a problem. And he's been a mess for a lot of years. A lot of public stuff that's been really kind of just really crazy. So again, Dwight Howard, best opportunity to win. The Lakers have the best opportunity to win with him in the lineup, I think, because of what he brings to that lineup. But more importantly, this is an opportunity, ironically, similar to DeMarcus Cousins with the Golden State Warriors. What did DeMarcus Cousins have to offer when he went to Golden State before he got hurt? DeMarcus Cousins was coming off of playing really well with the New Orleans Pelicans. Did get the kind of contract he wanted. Said, you know what? I'm going to go to Golden State. I'm going to go rehab my image. And I'm going to go try and win a championship. And then try to cash in this summer to be with another team. It ultimately didn't work out that way. But Dwight Howard finds himself in a similar situation. Really good player for a long time, who has an opportunity to rehab his image with a team that has a chance to win a championship, and to do so with the best player in the world still in LeBron Ramon James. If Dwight Howard cannot rehab his basketball image with this team, this roster during this time, with this opportunity to win a championship, it's done for him. And he understands that, and I think the Lakers made that extremely and abundantly clear when they met with him. Look, Dwight, this is it, man. This is it. LeBron James, again, the meeting is very interesting how they described it. Emotional, Dwight Howard very contrite, very humbled, and a guy who understands that the opportunity for him to do what he can to help this Lakers team is essentially in front of him, and the Lakers are taking a flyer on him. Look, man, it's a low-risk, high-reward move that I said the Lakers should make, and ultimately they did. Bring in Dwight Howard, kick the tires on it, see what he's got. The Lakers could still ultimately make a move. Now, a lot of folks will say, Kevin, they could have just saved the roster spot and waited for Andre Iguodala to be bought out by the Memphis Grizzlies, who for some reason are playing hardball by keeping him right now. I don't see any reason why the Memphis Grizzlies are even doing that and keeping Andre Iguodala around. They need to let him go. I understand not trying to help another team win a championship, but y'all not winning a championship either. Let Andre Iguodala go and have the opportunity to go help somebody win a championship. Good gracious. So a lot of folks are like, look, man, the Lakers should have just held out, kept the roster spot open if Andre Iguodala came in to help let JaVale McGee, run its course there. I think they made the right move here. I still think that they could still ultimately get Andre Iguodala if they want to. But at the same time, you couldn't pass up on this talent. And that ultimately what got him in the door, his talent that Dwight Howard has. And if that's the case, Guess what? We'll see. Memphis, what was your reaction to Dwight Howard signing with the Lakers? What do you think he can bring them?
I mean, he's going to bring – here's the first thing. If nothing else, he's going to bring them some security, a little bit of security in the middle for Davis. I mean, Davis could do it himself, honestly. This team could be faster. And I guess the one thing I don't understand is what the tempo of this team is going to be. Because if you have, like, both LeBron on the court along with that dude, that's going to – LeBron's not really going to slow up the pace. He can play at both paces. That guy, though, Howard, I don't know if he's a fast-paced, get up the court type dude like Davis. I don't see that happening. Maybe back in the day when he was in Orlando, but now I don't see that happening. But it gives you options on how to play. I mean, if you wanted to go big, you could have Howard and Davis down there, Kuzma. I mean, that if you put those three in your front court, you're all of a sudden, you're looking around like, oh, I don't know how we attack that. I mean, you could have LeBron at the 2 at that point, and then all of a sudden things get really eerie. Like, what do you do with those 4 guys on the court? Add in, random point guard. You can slip in whatever point guard you want into that foursome, and then you got defensive problems all over the floor.
Yeah.
But I mean, Howard. I don't know if Howard's talented enough to actually play with his back towards because I know the Lakers. I know what they've been doing so far is playing with straight up man to man or whatnot. Howard's more of a back to the basket type of guy down low, and I'm just not sure if he's one of those guys that can play out beyond the arc. How they like to play there in LA, kind of stretching the defense. So it may give you some offensive prowess that you can go big, you can slow the ball down, but I don't know if that's how they want to play. It's going to be interesting to see how he kind of fits into the flow of the game and what they want to accomplish.
It's going to be interesting to see how this goes forward. Dwight Howard will wear the number 39 for the Los Angeles Lakers going into the 2019-2020 NBA season. This is the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show on the Sports Radio American Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app. The phone lines are open, 888-444-0570. When we come back, I got some random thoughts from what took place this weekend across the entire sporting landscape, including more on Andrew Luck's retirement next on the CT Sports Radio live show. Come back with us.
Pretzel Crust fans, rejoice because it's back by popular demand. Little Caesars Large Soft Pretzel Crust Pizza featuring a creamy cheddar cheese sauce, pepperoni, and a 4-cheese blend surrounded by a delicious salted soft pretzel crust for just $6. Hot and ready every day between 4 and 8 and only $6 from the home of Pretzel Crust Pizza, Little Caesars.
Pizza at participating locations plus tax.
Your cell phone's connected to your tablet. Your tablet's connected to your laptop. Your laptop's connected to your Wi-Fi. 1 weak link and thieves are in.
The digital world is so connected these days, it just takes 1 weak link for criminals to get in. New LifeLock identity theft protection now has the power of Norton Security to help protect against the threats of today's connected world.
Your desktop's connected to your smart TV. Your smart TV's connected to your smartwatch.
Threats to your identity, like your info for sale on the dark web. And online threats to your devices, like ransomware. No one can prevent all identity theft or cybercrime or monitor all transactions at all businesses, but new LifeLock with Norton detects a wide range of threats to your identity and devices. If there's a problem, our agents will work to fix it.
Your smartwatch is connected to your video doorbell. Your video doorbell's connected to your smart lock.
Join now and get an additional 10% off your first year. Go to lifelock.com and enter promo code 100. That's promo code 100. New LifeLock with Norton. More detection, more protection.
It's the game everyone's talking about. Shim Sham, a laugh-out-loud adventure for you and your
cockroaches.
Part board game, part dance-off, Shim Sham is loads of fun for
cockroaches
of all ages. Just spin the wheel, strike your pose, and get ready for a
scurrying cockroach. Don't let roaches ruin the moment. Orkin, home is where the bugs aren't. Tap now for $50 off your first Orkin service.
Every day across America, terrible quotes are happening.
Parrots are not as smart as they say they are.
There's dried fruit because there's no fruit lotion.
Pandas seem like the cutest way to die.
If dreams are what is to come, let us raise werewolves.
So terrible. But thanks to Safe Auto, you can get a great car insurance quote in just 3 minutes that could save you 25%. Visit safeauto.com today.
You're listening to Sports Radio America.
Welcome back in the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, presented by Media NPC. Go to www.medianpc.com and download the app on your iOS and Android device to get your mobile press conference on with Media NPC. You can follow the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live show all over Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CT Sports Radio. And the Clutch Talk Sports Radio phone line is 888-444-0570 if you want to get in on the conversation. Make sure you go to youtube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can watch our show currently streaming live to the CT Sports Radio live show. My producer, Memphis, spends along for the ride with me today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. Thank you to all those joining us live today on sportsradioamerica.com. TuneIn Radio and the TuneIn app, coming off a tremendous weekend of action across the entire sporting landscape. Again, the phone number is 888-444-0570, 888-444-0570 if you want to get in on the conversation. A lot of cool things happened this past weekend. The Little League World Series. River Ridge, Louisiana, winning the Little League World Series. Roy McIlroy winning the FedEx Cup playoffs. A cool $15 million that he won this past weekend for the FedEx Cup playoffs. So congratulations to him. Week 3 of the NFL preseason is in the books. No, Ezekiel Elliott does not have a new contract, but Andrew Luck retired. And that is where I will start with my random thoughts. Andrew Luck, of course, retiring at the age of 29 after 7 seasons in the NFL, a 55-33 record, but played with a myriad of injuries throughout his entire career. Some of his injuries included a lacerated kidney, torn rib cartilage, knee problems, a shoulder injury that kept him out for an entire year. And a lot of folks had a lot of interesting things to say. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. Doug Gottlieb and Dan Dockich having some really, I thought, just dumb things to say about Andrew Luck's retirement. It just got me to thinking, man, this thing with respect to athleticism, this thing with respect to athletic careers is finite, man. And you just never know when a guy has simply had enough. Folks have talked about Andrew Luck's retirement as one of the most shocking retirements, if not the most shocking retirement in all of sports. To me, it's still Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders retired when he was well on his way to becoming the all-time NFL leading rusher. There was no stopping Barry Sanders from getting that record. Barry Sanders is one of the greatest football players in the history of this game. And I still, even being a young kid, being floored at the idea that I was not going to watch Barry Sanders on the football field any longer, because he was that good. He was that dynamic. Yes, terrorized my Dallas Cowboys and used to do so quite often. But at the same time, he was one of the best players I ever saw on the football field. He did things. His negative 10-yard runs were some of the greatest things I've ever seen ever on a football field. And when Barry Sanders was like, you know what? I'm not doing this no more. I don't want to do this no more. In fact, I quit. I retire. It was like, whoa, Barry Sanders retired? Mainly because, yes, the Detroit Lions were putrid. They were not getting any better. And they refused to get better, it seemed like, around Barry Sanders. So for all intents and purposes, I don't blame Barry Sanders for retiring. I don't blame Calvin Johnson for retiring either. Taking all that punishment that he did as a wide receiver and the Detroit Lions not being all that good during his time there either. But for Andrew Luck, it's a little bit different, Because as I mentioned earlier, it's at a position of quarterback. The rules of today's NFL are skewed toward protecting the quarterback, sometimes at ridiculous costs. Sometimes the penalties against defensive linemen and defensive players for the hits that they lay on quarterbacks. See your man Clay Matthews last year, who was just incredulously at the referees every single week, it seemed like, because he was getting called for roughing the passer penalties every single week. And Clay's like, what do I have to do? How can I tackle a quarterback? That is what today's NFL rules are toward quarterbacks. So for Andrew Luck playing the position of quarterback to retire at 29, not even 30 years old because he was too beat up, tells you a lot about what you need to know, not just about the physical pounding that Andrew Luck took, but the emotional and mental strain that it put on him every single time that he was out there on the football field, and the punishment that his offensive line, look, I'm not blaming per se his offensive line. Offensive line wasn't good. Wasn't good for a lot of years, and he took a lot of unnecessary punishment. Cam Newton has taken a lot of unnecessary punishment, and you're starting to see the punishment that Cam Newton has taken over the years starting to catch up with him too. You saw the foot injury that he had against the New England Patriots. You've seen a lot of the injuries that he's had start to catch up with him because he's been getting beat up. Now, yes, his style of play is a little bit different, where he was asked to do a lot more running, and all the things that Cam Newton was asked to do on a football field is a lot different than Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, though, was a pure passer. Andrew Luck was a guy that stood back there in the pocket and delivered the football down the field. And my man said, I've had enough. More importantly, fans, this is my message to you. None of us have the right to decide when a player should or should not quit/retire or retire altogether because our self-service is not being serviced anymore by said player playing on the football field. I am just flabbergasted and floored at people who feel like they can dictate to a player, you know what? You shouldn't have retired 2 weeks before the season. I'm booing you. You shouldn't have retired at all. Get over yourself. Get back on the football field. Continue to rehab. Continue to put yourself in a position where you're mentally anguished week in and week out. Dan Labertar had a tremendous tweet about this. How dare you, Andrew Luck, not service us anymore? How dare you, Andrew Luck, not put yourself before or put us before you as far as your needs are concerned? All of the things that Andrew Luck talked about in his press conference are all the things that you and I on a normal basis would decide to do if we were in the same position I would think that he was in. Somebody, and I think it was Doug Gottlieb also, talked about the idea that Andrew Luck's mental makeup isn't the same as Alex Smith because Alex Smith continues to try and rehab to get himself back on the football field from that gruesome leg injury that he had last year. This has nothing to do with any player who has ever tried to come back from any kind of career devastating injury. Andrew Luck's mental toll and mental anguish and the physical pain that came along with that was too much for him. And there is no problem with admitting that. There is more strength in what Andrew Luck did than what any of us could really ever imagine, given what he has gone through from the time he talked about being the age of 3-4 years old, wanting to play quarterback in the NFL, and he actually got to do that on the highest level and was considered one of the best at his position. Yet the physical nature of football took that away from him. And more importantly, fans who decided to get on their high horse, decide to boo. There was even reports today that folks from the Indianapolis Colts fans were asking for refunds on their season tickets because Andrew Luck retired. Get over yourself. Andrew Luck put himself in the best position possible to literally get out there and bleed for you as a fan and as a player doing what he had to do. Look, it really bothers me when I see folks come out here and try to put things in their own perspective, in their own lights for things that they wouldn't be capable of doing themselves. Doug Gottlieb, Dan Dockich would not be able to do what Andrew Luck did for the years that he did it on. And for them to sit as quote-unquote professionals and say those kinds of things and then others come behind them and support that foolishness, it to me just blows my mind. And I cannot get over that. Keep your boos to yourself. Look, I understand being upset at the situation. If you're a Colts fan and you're upset at the situation because of the potential that you had, that's fine. But this is a player who played in immeasurable amounts of pain for you, for your entertainment. Let it go and get behind the quarterback that you got now in one Jacoby Brissett, because he deserves the full support of the Colts and its fan base going forward. And ultimately, that's where Colts fans need to get over themselves and move on toward. There's a guy that wants to be there, wants to play well, and more importantly, a guy that Andrew Luck considers a guy who can take care of this football team and handle what he left behind going forward. Life circumstances changes a lot of things for people. Andrew Luck got married. Andrew Luck felt that the time was coming for him to move on. And guess what? He made a decision for himself. And for a lot of athletes, especially for football players, it's really tough to do, especially given the hyper masculinity that surrounds sports these days as it is. And for Andrew Luck to say, you know what? I'm going to take a step back. I'm hurting. I'm still in pain. And I have to finally do something that's going to benefit my long-term health. There is nothing that an athlete needs to sacrifice for you, for me, as a fan, if it means sacrificing their health for our entertainment. At the end of the day, this is a game. This is a game for our entertainment to watch. And those who put themselves on the line week in and week out for 3-hour car crashes at a time, for 17 weeks at a time, for years at a time, do so knowing that their lives will never be the same after they retire from the game of football. And they did it for your entertainment. And they did it for your dollar. And they did it because they love to do it. But at the same time, the sacrifices that they gave up in order to do such sport and participate in such a sport sometimes is not worth continuing to move forward with. And for Andrew Luck, that was the decision that he made. But I was just really upset at the way fans got down with this and the way that quote-unquote professional folks on the radio and on television really went about this. I am really surprised at how much lack of sensitivity, how much there was a lack of clarity and perspective when talking about this. Memphis, I'd be interested to hear your thought before we get out of here about how folks responded to Andrew Luck and his retirement.
I didn't really. There are some guys that I know in this business. There are some guys I don't know. I don't know Gottlieb. But I do know Clay Travis. He and I went to school together. Gottlieb and Clay are friends. I was trying to, tap Clay on the shoulder like, hey, man, why is Gottlieb out here tripping? I mean, seriously, like, was he trying to be funny? Sometimes there's some deadpan jokes that people post on Twitter, and because you don't know the context of what, somebody's posting, if they're trying to be funny or whatever, I was like, was he trying to be funny or what's going on? And Clay was like, I don't know, man. So I'm just like, that kind of left him wide open to the criticism, and rightfully deserved. I mean, if you're going to look at somebody and say, that's the most millennium thing, I don't know if it being the millennial thing, basically trying to say that's soft. And for a former college basketball player to tell a current NFL player that you're soft, I can't even describe the nonsense that had to go through his head, the mental gymnastics that you had to go through to get there. Which is why Troy Aikman pretty much called him out, like, yo, dude, stay in your lane. You know what I'm saying? Stay in your lane. How are you gonna be talking about the pro football quarterbacks and what it takes? I mean, I was going through my show. A lot of the first round QBs, they get their season cut in half or shortened. Their careers just because of injuries, and it's mainly because GMs have started taking an affinity to getting quarterbacks in that first round and really not stocking their team with offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not protecting the guys who they're drafting, and that's leading to a lot of guys. RG3 was in that same class. I mean, think about that. RG3. I mean, the things that we were talking about, both RG3 and Andrew Luck. You know what I'm saying? What they were supposed to do out here. and where they are now, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, quarterbacks are getting hurt, and a lot of people aren't really looking at the reasons for that. But if you think about, Luck and Peyton Manning, all the years that they spent combined in Indianapolis and only having one Super Bowl out of that, I blame management and GMs for not building a team around both of those two gentlemen. I would say at least 4 Super Bowls you should have gotten out of those guys.
Yeah, Colts fans are spoiled. I think it was something like 19 out of the last 21 years. They've either had Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning as their quarterback.
Right.
Like, come on, man. Like, y'all got to get over yourselves. Like, for them to – and that's the thing. These Colts fans who did boo, they're going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives and as fans. Of, because I lit them up. A lot of folks lit those fans up. A lot of NFL players, and good for the NFL players who had a lot to say, obviously, about Andrew Luck's retirement. And they lit up Colts fans who booed because you never want to see – and to me – it's more of a microcosm. I think a lot of the reason why a lot of these NFL players responded the way that they did is because they want to make sure they let fans know, don't you come out here and do this stuff. We put our lives and our bodies on the line for you week after week for your entertainment. Yes, because it's our profession and it's what we love to do, but more so we want to make fans and put smiles on kids' faces and this, that, and the third. Don't you come out here and do that same thing to us when we decide if we want to have enough of playing football and retire. I think that's ultimately the message that a lot of NFL players are trying to send to fans all across the NFL. Don't do that. It's not cool. And nobody should be out here trying to justify why Colts fans should boo a guy who literally put his body on the line for them for 7 years. Wish the best for Andrew Luck in his retirement. He has certainly earned it with his play on the football field. And who knows if he does come back. Jim Irsay desperately hopes that he comes back. But it sounded like from all accounts, based on the way that he talked during his press conference, Andrew Luck has played his last football game, and he's not coming back. And I wouldn't either if it meant taking that punishment the way that he did. Thank you to our guest, Arif Hasan, for joining us today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live show. Arif Hasan of the Athletic Minnesota, good enough to join us today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live show. If you didn't catch anything live with us, make sure you download and subscribe to our free podcast, available on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you get your podcasts for free. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel on youtube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio. For my producer, Memphis Spence, my name is Kevin Gray. Follow us all over social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CT Sports Radio. We will be back on Friday to get you ready and recap the week that is in sports. This is real Clutch Sports Talk, CT Sports Radio Live. We are out. Have a great week. I'll talk to you on Friday.